Here all, welcome back to our channel. In this video, we are going to discuss about AWS security groups. So in order to discuss about these security groups, we need to understand what is security groups and why we are going to use on security groups and which scenario we are going to use on security groups. Let's understand about what is security group. Security group is an virtual firewall in order to safeguard for the resources which is defined or which is launched within a AWS network. For example, to understand what is security groups, let me type security groups. If you see here, security group controls the traffic that is allowed to reach and leave the resources that is associated with. For example, after you associate a security group with an EC2 instance, it controls the inbound and outbound traffic for the instance. Okay, which means that when you launch an EC2 instance, you need to define inbound and outbound rules in order to safeguard your particular EC2 instance so that the particular resources will be safeguarded in order to which resource is going to access that particular resource and which request and response to be accessed or to be sent from that particular resource to outside the world. So that is how the firewall which has been created so that it would be safeguard for the network from the outside network. So let's discuss about one by one, like AWS platform. We have security groups. We discuss about under the security group. It is kind of virtual firewall. Okay, let's understand about what is firewall. Firewall. Okay, just to see, firewall is a network security device that monitors incoming and outgoing network traffic and devices whether to allow or block specific traffic based on the defined security rules, which means that it is a firewall. It is a firewall in in, in a network security that device monitor incoming and outgoing network traffic, which means that we have a firewall which is defined as an inbound and outbound rule so that we know that that particular devices to be accessed from the outside, from inside the network as well as from the outside the network. So which network access needs to be allowed and which network access needs to be denied. So you have to be defined like so inbound as well as for the outbound rule in order to safeguard for the particular resources. Okay, so now we learned about firewall. Firewall. Let's discuss about virtual firewall. Virtual firewall. Okay, so if you see, like, a virtual firewall is a firewall device that provides a network traffic filtering and monitoring for virtual machines in an virtualized environment, which means that in an AWS environment, we are going to launch an EC2 instance in a VPC network. So under that VPC network, we are going to create an security groups. In that security group, we are going to define inbound and outbound rules in order to safeguard that particular resource. Inbound rule, which is one of the rule defined for to control the incoming request. Outbound rule is one of the rule which is defined to control the outgoing request. So we have inbound as well as for the outbound rule in order to safeguard that particular resources to be defined so that which request to be accessed and which response has to be sent out from that particular network. Okay, so now you can understand about, so we have in a AWS environment, we have security groups. Under the security groups, it is act as a which firewall, virtual firewall. To understand about virtual firewall, we have a firewall mechanism in order to achieve inbound, in order to save that particular resource, uh, to be defined for inbound and outbound rules to be defined so that that particular resource has to be understand which request has to be consumed and which response has to be uh, sent out from that particular network. Okay, so firewall, then virtual firewall. Okay, so in an AWS environment, we have security groups. So what is security groups? So to understand about security groups, we are going to define this firewall and virtual firewall. What virtual firewall? It is act as a virtual firewall. To first of all understand what is firewall, and from that we understand what is virtual firewall. It's all about. Okay. In that we have defined like rules, inbound and outbound rules. Okay. Now get into this AWS management console. Let's understand about in a practical way. To let's create an security group, AWS management console. Okay, so click on this. Then we have sign into this console. So I have already signed up. Okay, so in case if you have that, if you don't sign up, you just uh, log in with your root ID or maybe for the AWS account ID. So most probably I just my account is got already logged in. So that is why. So here you can go to that EC2 instance, click on that EC2 instance, or maybe you can type security groups. Okay, security groups. One way you can go to EC2 instance. For example, go to services. We have EC2 instance. From there, you just go on security. Under network and security, we have security groups. And other way, you can go here and search from the security groups. Okay, so click on this. EC2 dashboard, security groups. Okay, so once you have done it will be there under this security groups. Then from there you can able to create security group button. Just click on that. Okay, so security group name is SSH access for my access for web server, and this is for my dev web server. Okay, server. Now you see that is default VPC. If suppose If you want to create your custom VPC, then you can also select it, the VPC which you have already created. Just for my case, I have just selecting for the default VPC. From there, we are going to see, this is for, you see here, there are two rules. One is for inbound and for the outbound rules, right? So here, outbound rules, which is by default. So that is the reason it is, when we are talking about the documentation, we heard about like it's come with the default rule. See, when you talk about this outbound rule, security group, which having this default rule, always all traffic, which is allowed, and for that inbound rule, which is not defined as per when we are creating a security group. Okay, now you can go ahead and create and security groups. Okay, so just created. If you see here, this is the security group which is created right now. Uh, if you go here under six security groups, you can able to see the security group which you have created now. I can see this is the security group which you have recently created. And if you want to understand, or in order to know more about these properties and other stuffs, just click on the security group to understand. If you see here, we have this action button. So edit, manage, copy, and delete. Okay. So we have here, as I told you, we have two rules. One is for inbound and outbound rules. And outbound rule we have already seen. That means by default in AWS, which is when we are creating a security group, by default it is providing for the outbound rules. Means by default it will be there. But inbound rule, right now we don't set any inbound rule. So in order to protect, or in order to give your inbound rule, so what you need to do, you have to go here and edit inbound rule. Okay, for example, now you want we want to add for the SSH, right? So what we need to do, we need to select SSH anywhere, save rules. We have created SSH rule. In case, suppose if you want to add more rule, then add rule. And we have going to add HTTP anywhere, save rules. So right now we have added two rules, two inbound rules, which means to allow SSH connection from anywhere, which means that it allows anywhere from that outside network for the SSH connection in order to connect with that particular EC2 machine. Similarly, for HTTP connection, it allows all HTTP connections from outside network anywhere from anywhere range for the IPv4 address to access particular EC2 machine with that particular network, VPC network. Okay, I hope you have understood now. So we have VPC network. Under that, we are launched for EC2 instance. In that EC2 instance, we are going to create an security group. Under that security group, we have two rules. One is for inbound and another one is for outbound. So inbound rule is going to be defined by the user, and outbound rule by default, which is when we are creating an security group, by default it would be there when you are launching that, when you are creating in each security group. So but inbound rule, once you have created, or maybe when you are creating, you have to be defined which network access, or which the access you need to provide from which source, or maybe for which IP address. So which protocol you need to allow, all those things you need to be defined, and which type of protocol, all those things you need to be defined in order to access your EC2 machine from outside the network. Okay, so now you can see, I think you have you can understand now for that. So we have AWS infra, cloud infra. Under that, security group. We discussed about security group, and then we discussed about security groups is an security groups is the virtual firewall. So first we understand about what is firewall, and we discussed about what is firewall. Then understanding about virtual firewall and why we used for this virtual firewall. Then we discussed about inbound and outbound rules. So we have law created an security group, created a created a security group, created a security groups and defined inbound and outbound rules. So if you see, we have been created for EC2 under EC2. We can see that a section called networks and security. Under the security, under network and security, we have security groups. If you click on that, the security group which you have recently created, it will be there. So once you have created, you can able to see that. Once you open that, you can able to see that the security group which you have created. Under that, you can able to see inbound and outbound rules, so that you can define that inbound and outbound rule in order to understand or in order to access your resource, in order to give uh, permissions, so that outside any one of the outside network can able to access with respect to providing necessary access. So I think you can go through these steps one by one and also understand. If you see here, let me show you add rule. We have many rules, right? So if you see here, there are many protocols under this. If you see SSH, SMTP, HTTP, POP3, IMP, LDAP, HTTPS, SMB, SMTPS. So there are network NFS. There are so many protocols, right? So you can able to see to understand. So which protocol, and based on your requirement and based on the industry nature, for what purpose and why we need to do, and which scenario we need to use those um, means kind of firewalls or kind of types, security group types, right? So in order to safeguard your resources, or maybe in order to access your launched resources. So I think we have covered pretty much about these security groups. So you can go ahead and learn whatever we discussed. Then you try to create an security group, and you can see to understand what are the protocols and which purpose and why we are using all those things, to learn about uh, to learn more about that in order to um, gain your more knowledge. And also, if you want to add, you can add rule. Suppose if you don't want, you can have that delete button in order to delete those. Okay, so I think that would be fine. So, and also I want to give some more like AWS security groups for that. So I always recommend, okay, so in case if you want to learn more about that, So please, you can recommend. I think you can always uh, refer that AWS official documentations. I can able to show you right away. If you see here AWS documentation, we have that control traffic for your AWS using security groups, right? So if you see, if you go to this link, then you can understand each and every point in order to understand more about security groups. I'll just show you. If you see here, okay, so we have the region. So any one region, we have created an VPC. Under that, we have launched an security group under public subnet. So if you see, client is accessing that security group, accessing that public subnet under that the EC2 instance, which is created under public service subnet by using internet gateway. So we have that virtual firewall, which is present. That is called security groups. Okay, so client is going to access that, or any machine or any system is going to access that EC2 machine, which is launched under VPC in particular region in a AWS infrastructure by using internet gateway. Okay, so for that, it has defined inbound and outbound rules in order to access that resource. So when that particular client is getting passed through those security groups or the firewall, which is defined as part of that, then only this particular client is gain an access to access the resource which is defined in a particular network, VPC network. So this is how the system will work. So in order to access that the resource which is already present in a AWS cloud platform. Okay, now you can go through that to understand more about security group basics and security group example, security group rules. You see here basics. Okay, so to understand that, you can assign a security group only resource like that. So some of the security examples, you see to understand more about that. And also, then if you have the group rules, default security groups. So there are rules also which is mentioned. You can also go through that to understand more about that particular security groups. So I hope anyhow, so you have cleared for that. And I just want to understand elaborate way so that you can also go through which document you need to study, how to use those things, and also what purpose, why we are using this. So we can see for this we can teach or maybe we can discuss very simple way to understand what is security group and why we are going to use and how to create it. So we can easily can tell all those things in a 2 to 3 minutes. But somebody has to understand more about that. So which documentation we need to follow, what is background, why we are using and what purpose it is, and which scenarios we are going to use, what is inbound and outbound, what is firewall, what is virtual firewall, and what is network, what is VPC. To understand, see some of the keywords also we learned about in that. So maybe these are the things we have been covered as part of that, and also we discussed about theoretically and why we are using and what it is all about, and also I just shown as a demo or how to create an security group. So how to add those inbound and outbound rules and how to edit those things as well, and also I provided for the official documentation in order to gain your more understanding or gain your more knowledge with respect to that particular services. So I hope it is clear. And if you have any concern or in order to learn many things or if you need more information about this, so we are just I'm creating this type of contents with respect to AWS cloud and cloud computing and with respect to technical with respect to other technology videos. And if you have not subscribed it, I would request you to please subscribe so that whenever I'm creating this kind of video, so you will get a notification. So if you are already subscribed, just keep watching on it. So all the very best. We'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much.